Welcome to the Newsmaker. Today we are talking about the business of talking, more specifically about speech recognition. And our guest today is among those at the forefront of speech recognition, Alexei Popov, the founder and CEO of Speech. Welcome to the show. So first of all, let's paint a picture about how speech recognition will be used in the future, Alexei.
Well, we are lucky guys. We are promoting not some artificial things, but very natural things. We want our customers, enterprises, to offer their customers a really omni-channel communication platform. Here I follow Gartner. I'm twice lucky following the Gartner's approach of the future. So that they will not be insisting their customers to only use typing, scrolling, some mobile apps, but also let those who would like to speak to them, who would like to talk to them, to just keep talking and keep speaking.
Does this mean, Alexei, that in 20 years down the road, we will only use machines to communicate? And do you think that people will actually like that?
I would say no, because anyway, machines will never replace communications between people. But what I would say that for some simple inquiries, we will use machines. And moreover, we will make conversations not as a source of cost like they are today, but as a source of knowledge, as a source of revenues, as a source of additional sales.
I'm glad you say that because I'm a linguist. I speak 9 languages, so that means that it was worth it and you would still encourage people to learn languages.
Yes, it was worth.
Let's talk about your past experience, Alexei. And you were a deputy head and CIO at the Treasury of Russia and heading up the IT department of the Russian government as well. How has this influenced your experience and your work nowadays?
And before those 2 jobs, I was an entrepreneur and the CEO of one of the Russian companies who still exists in Russia, one of the major market players. So I had experience. I had a great chance to have experience from supplier side, then from the customer side, and then again moving to supplier side. So I would say that that experience in a big enterprises like Russian government back office or Russian treasury is a priceless experience. So a lot of suppliers, they claim they are customer oriented, but it is the only way to be truth there. To stay in customers' shoes, to understand how customers perceive the things. And now I have a chance to understand both points of view, the customer and the supplier points of view. And it's tremendous experience.
You have also helped the Russian e-government to develop its platforms. How would you say does the Russian development in the IT sector compare to, for example, the US, China and Switzerland here, especially in terms of e-government where your experience is in?
Well, the developments themselves, they're very talented. And there are now a lot of companies who do time and material and outsourcing development. They still exist in Russia and in Ukraine and Belarus, wherever. And the second is that I believe that the e-government in Russia is adult enough and very well used by the citizens.
As a Russian, you came to Switzerland in 2015 with your family. Why did you pick Switzerland to set up your startup?
Well, first, it was a desire to create international business and to create some really scientific-based international business. And fortunately, all came in one. First thing, that we found already existing group of a very talented engineers who worked with close cooperation with ETH in Zurich. The scientific base in speech technologies in Switzerland is extremely well, so it's extremely experienced. And the second is so first is the group of engineers. Second is that for doing international business, Swiss is one of the better locations, in my opinion, in terms of tax regulation, labor regulation. The third is that Swiss community is very mature in terms of receiving new IT stuff, new disruptive things, but speech technologies did not exist in Swiss German so far. So we were the first who brought this experience here to make these solutions understand and speak Swiss German dialects, which is the major language of Switzerland. And the fourth, that my family and myself, we like Switzerland, we like living here. So all came in one, and that's why we are here.
Let's talk about the Swiss dialects. And as you mentioned, you developed the Swiss dialects, especially Swiss German. Now, why did you see that kind of demand? Why did you decide to have speech recognition for Swiss German dialects?
There are a lot of banks, there are a lot of enterprises in Switzerland. And despite in all the world, the people used to use speech and voice-driven interfaces to use Google, to use Amazon, to use Siri with the Apple, Samsung, whatever. In Switzerland, that's the same, but they don't understand Swiss German dialects. And with their enterprises, with the banks, with insurance companies, people still like to speak their mother tongue. So Bern dialect, or Zurich dialect, or St. Gallen dialect.
So how many dialects have you developed? Is it the Bernese, is it Zurich, the Valais, Schaffhausen? Which are some of the dialects that you have developed?
I believe all major dialects.
And is there a real industry demand? I mean, why should the big banks not just choose German, classical German for their tools?
I give you a very clear and small example. SBB Up. SBB was our first customer in Switzerland. And you can just download their preview app and try to dictate station names in different dialects. It will not, for sure, no one will name stations in High German or in other languages. Everyone tries to use their own dialect for doing that. And so that is basically one and the simple example why.
So is this the niche market that you are seeing for speech and your business? And do you see yourself develop dialects in other major global world languages like Arabic or Chinese as well?
First of all, in Switzerland, I believe you know that there is not only Swiss German. It's Swiss German, French, Italian, High German, and English on top of it. So at least 5 different languages. So once you develop all of them, you're ready to spread to Italy, to France, to German, to UK. And that is the first reason why we are spreading in Europe.
And that is your plan, so this kind of expansion
it
plan
is the reality.
To tap into different dialects.
For Italy and for UK, it is already a reality. And the next steps, we are slightly engaging with the German market. And the next step definitely will be to open the branch of speech in German, in Nordic. So first of all, we are going to cover the Europe.
In terms of, on a practical level, what kind of technical difficulties have you been facing to develop these different dialects?
The only one technical difficulty there is the data. Because as every type of artificial intelligence, to benefit out of using it, first you have to put enough efforts to coach it, And for that, you need enough data. And we have a lot of partners in Switzerland, and our partners helped us to obtain enough data and therefore to make our model and our system smart enough to understand it.
Now, you're not the only player in that market. Voice and speech recognition is in a strong upswing at the moment. Which industries are you targeting in specific? You mentioned SBB, but I imagine banking and logistics, etc., healthcare, education will also be on your list?
There are 2 points here. First point, that I don't want to overestimate, but it is the must, and soon will be the must, to use speech technologies to everyone who is communicating with the customer. You can take the example of the United States, for example, of the other advanced countries in the area. So it is the must. Let's set that it is the must, not only for big enterprises, but for the small and for the middle-sized as well. The second is that enterprises are so pampered and they get used to achieve really good quality of delivery from their suppliers, that they don't respect only beautiful scientific technologies. It doesn't work. Works if you know their business inside out, and works if you really help them to overcome pain points. So if you really know their workflow and are able to change it.
Can you give us some concrete examples for that?
A concrete example.
Why it is a must, for so many companies to have speech recognition?
Yeah, because you can imagine how often you use your iPhone and your Google for voice-driven search. Why not to help it with your customer? Why just to call to the call center and will be endlessly asking for your identity, besides being identified by the voice? It's obsolete.
So basically, mainly the insurance and banking sector should be able to benefit in terms of speaking, verification, biometric verification, and also fraudster detection, right?
Everyone who has the call centers shall benefit. So everyone who use the call center or is going to use the call center shall benefit out of this technology. It doesn't matter whether this call center is small or large, because it's anyway natural when people call you and being served 24/7, but not only 5/8 in the working days. So for me, we have customers within the banks, in insurances, in public transport. These customers we can acquire ourselves. We are not only technically oriented. We build up the company from the very beginning as business-oriented company who know the business of our customers inside out. But the rest of the customers we serve via partners, because we believe that partners know their business better, and we have special tools, special programs to motivate the partners to engage more and more with it.
For example, in the US, I have seen that search queries, 25% of search queries are already done by voice input. How does Switzerland rank globally?
I believe this ratio is distributed more or less equally between the advanced countries. For Switzerland, no one made a calculation, but this amount so far can be slightly less, only because of the Swiss-German things. These giants, they don't care about Swiss-German. So you can use only High German, and if you use Swiss-German, it understands you, but the quality is very, very low.
In general, will we still be using our fingers, our thumbs to actually type messages and put in queries, or just will everything be by voice recognition only?
No, I would like to talk about the entire platform, where everyone chooses the way he likes to communicate. But these channels will not be separated like now. So, for example, there is no way for you to start dictating something and then to continue filling in by typing and then dictate to make a voice signature at the end. But we want it to be that way.
What about threats of cyber attacks and hacking and all that? I guess your software must be very precise, right? To really detect this is the voice of Alexei, this is the voice of Martina. But how can you make sure that it's accurate and that you have a very low margin of error?
Well, of course, there is always a trade-off between how many fraudsters you recognize and how many real customers you will be declining. There is always a trade-off. So we always set this threshold in accordance to what kind of operation you are going to make with your voice. I do believe that with the voice, you never can transfer $1 million to wherever without any other commitment or any other kind of approval.
And that's because every voice of every human being in the world that has ever existed is unique.
It's unique. It's unique. But anyway, even if you are using payment cards, if you are using any other type, so for now, our system can recognize fraudsters, can recognize synthetic voices, so it's adult enough. But I believe that the fraud technology will also grow up. And so it's always a fight between the fraudsters and real customers.
Talk to me about costs, Alexei. How expensive are your software products?
Well, of course it costs money because the research, development, keeping it up to date costs money, delivery costs money. But what we're usually going to do, and for that we have a special tool on our website, which is called ROI calculator. We do believe that our technologies bring revenues or cost saving to the customers, usually both.
And do you see the big businesses in Switzerland and also SMEs cashing in there already, or is it just the big players that can actually afford it at this stage?
It's affordable for everyone. The goal of this tool is to make sure that it's affordable to even middle and small size companies. They can easily calculate it, or you can do, or whomever can do. So just place your amount of agents and calculate your ROI, and we make it attractive for you. That is our pricing model.
Now, with all these voices and the data, you need a massive storage system. How do you archive all of these dialects and words and phrases?
Let's split this question into two. First is that we do implementation in-house. For some customers, we offer cloud-based solution. For some customers, we go on their premises and make implementations there. The majority of Swiss banks and insurance companies as well, they prefer that way of deployment. So the data still remains there and doesn't leave not only Switzerland, that we guarantee, doesn't leave customer premises. The second is that from each customer, we try to benefit making our model more and more mature. But model is not the data, it's the derivative. It's like not the data itself, but the knowledge we obtain out of managing this data.
You are very bullish on Switzerland as a Russian living here and starting your business here in Switzerland. But China, Tencent, Baidu, the big tech giants there are also massively investing in speech recognition, AI, machine learning. How do you see the competition from there?
They are rather our allies than competitors.
How?
Because they are doing B2C business. And we are not doing B2C, we are doing B2B business.
Do you see any potential team up with Chinese players to tap into the massive Chinese market of some 1.4 billion people?
For now, no. I believe, and we discussed it several times with our potential investors, that engagement in new country, it's not only to offer a good product and the language there. It's a marketing, it's a targeting, it's a lot of investments to really penetrate the market you like.
And you have dozens of different dialects in China as well, plus dozens of minorities. Yes. So that costs a lot of money as well.
So far, frankly, China is not in our loop.
Mm-hmm. Where else are you planning to expand? Because right now you have your Zurich headquarters, you're in Milan, you're in London. Where else do you plan to set up offices?
The first target is Germany, indeed. The second is Nordic. And then we consider the rest of the Europe. And so first is Europe.
How much money do you spend every year on research and development? Can you put any figure on that?
Well, we are well funded, and we started to get the revenues from the second year of the company.
And who are your main investors backing you?
The first, it was me who invested in the R&D. But again, it did not require that much investment because we started to get the revenues from the very beginning. So, and our turnover was last year was around 4 million Swiss francs. It was a tiny profit within it. So all our costs are distributed between three main streams. First, of course, is the R&D. We invest a lot into research, development, and keeping it up to date. The second is business development. We have to invest in learning about our customers, in offering them really valuable products, because as I've just told, no one is interested in just scientific technology. We have to offer them user cases. And the second is delivery. We have to keep Swiss quality. We have to stick to Swiss quality, and our delivery, our project management has to be excellent.
That must be a big selling point if you go internationally. Now, the next big steps in the industry are basically sentiment analysis and emotion detection, right? How are you planning to tap into this segment?
From the very beginning, we tried to replicate the way of reacting for the voice, the way of understanding the voice, the way we used to have. We never just pick up the keywords. It doesn't work. We pick up the sense. It's the first. Second is that we try to identify and verify the person whom we are talking about by voice, not only by our eyes. Third, that we are trying to understand his emotion, her emotion, how he or she receives what we are talking about. And the second, and the last but not least, we are trying to understand the overall sentiment. Was your counterpart happy with your conversation or not? And that's all we do, and that's all we offer right now. So at the end, each customer, despite starting with one technology from the stack, anyway, at the end, comes to the conclusion that he implements the entire stack of the technologies.
Does this also mean that you're planning to work with criminal, investigations and the police to detect if a criminal has lied or not?
We have these kind of demos. In reality, we have them.
So how much demand do you see from the Swiss police to work with you, or has it just been a pilot project so far?
I cannot disclose our customers so far. I would leave it to them. How they are working, how they are doing their job. But definitely the first and the much easier case is just to make the protocols. They do a lot of verbal conversations and they have to make a protocol out of it. So the first and the simple case is just to put into the text without consuming the time of the officer from what it was conversation about. It is the first step. Next comes the rest.
The voice is such a potential, right? What do you think is, its value, and how can it be exploited and explored further?
The value is very simple example. Unfortunately, a lot of enterprises so far deem call centers as a source of costs. But we want call centers to be the source of the revenues. They have to do more sales via call centers, saving the time of the agents answering just simple questions, leaving it to the machines. Second, they have to understand and make conclusions out of the data they have in the call center. They have to avoid post-call surveys. It doesn't make any sense. If you can get the overall sentiment out of the conversation itself, why to ask questions? You have everything on board. You will and shall, and it happens now, the identification of the person shall avoid these endless questions about who are you, what is your date of birth, what is your mother, old family name, and so on.
Speech coaching and vocal training are such a booming business nowadays, right? Especially in public speaking and our media world. What kind of importance do you attach to that? I mean, the voice must be, recognized as increasingly important in our world today.
It was important, and it's still important, and it will be important. You can like it or not, but even in a very successful cases where they report they are very successful with the penetration of the mobile app, frankly speaking, I don't believe that more than 50% of the customers receive it well. So the conversation still exists, and you can see how the young generation uses, for example, WhatsApp voice messages. They are talking, they are dictating, they are not typing. Young generation.
It took some time, though, because in China, where they use WeChat instead of WhatsApp, they've been, sending voice messages for a long, long time already. But it seemed like in Switzerland that started just 1 or 2 years ago, because maybe people were a bit shy to communicate that directly with the counterpart, because the Swiss people still have some, privacy in between.
Moreover, in that WeChat in China, as far as I know, they have recently implemented voice biometric feature. It is just up-to-date feature they implement. So I believe WhatsApp and Viber shall be the next on the list.
And you use voice messaging every day, Alexei?
Yes, frankly speaking, I don't like to dictate. I like to type or to make a call. But I type less and call more.
So basically it means a little bit like the comeback of the voice, right? Instead of typing, instead of words, instead of Twitter,
exactly.
That we use the voice, maybe a Twitter voice in the future.
I would say it is not come back, but we have to stop fighting against the voice. What we did in the recent 10, 15 years, we tried to move the conversation from natural way to artificial way. And it has some acceptance, but I believe that the peak is reached. So we have to concentrate more to support natural way of conversation, meaning voice, but embedding it into the omnichannel communication platform and make it transparent. Because before it was hidden. What they did, they just randomly listened and tried to make conclusions from 5% of the entire conversation, which did not work.
So basically the big comeback of the natural, voice in a digital era.
Exactly, exactly. So voice is not less digital than messaging or applications. So it's the same digital, but much, much more natural.
Thank you so much for coming in, Alexei, and we will keep talking in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It will be my pleasure.